I'm really excited about being able to do these next 4 episodes. We're going to be able to walk through each step of the process of opening up a restaurant or a food truck. For those of you who have maybe recently opened and you're joining us, there's going to be some information here that might help you fill the gaps and help you finish things. Most of the information that we're going to go on over, though, is for the person who's thinking of it, the person who's maybe up to their elbows in the process or can't wait to begin the process. So your friends at the Small Business Development Center have a lot of qualified advisors that are going to be able to help you when you want assistance and direction with each of these steps. But over the next 4 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to research the best practices I've found over the many years of working with people, opening restaurants for them and opening my own. We're going to talk today about the initial first step, getting your concept idea together, from idea to initial research to getting things defined, and being able to get your thoughts organized in enough manner where you're ready to get started. The second step is going to be tips on actually building that all-important business plan. We're going to walk through the key sections and what you should be putting in each section so that you have a well-organized way to present your idea to people that need to know whether they're going to be interested in investing in you, or perhaps they're going to be interested in working with you, or it's a landlord who may be interested in granting you that location. And then the third one is going to be spent all on organizing our numbers. Many first-time restaurant operators are surprised by something having to do with cost, permits, types of insurances that are necessary. So we're going to go through a way of completing your initial opening budget and operating projections, and that'll be step 3. And then the fourth one is going to be actually walking through the process, managing the timeline so that you get things that you need when you need them, and you can keep your time from getting started, getting funded, getting built, and getting open tight and well organized. Wasting time is wasting money, and a lot of first-time restaurant operators fall into that gap. So there we go. That's the overview. Let's get started. Step 1 is market research, getting your idea together, concept development. So where do the ideas come from? When you're going to restaurants and you're introduced to the owner and they say it's the very first restaurant, you're thinking, wow, how did you do this? How did you decide this? And it all starts with, where did the initial idea come from? So those of you who are listening are going to start thinking about, why is it I want to do what it is I want to do? Is it a particular food trailer? And what I'm interested in mostly is the flexibility and the catering. Or is the concept tied to a particular experience that I've had in the industry? Maybe the concept is tied to a particular place, childhood, early recipes, influences from first jobs, influences from family, that kind of thing. So what we learn from our experience in and outside our industry really does shape where the best ideas come from. And you do want to be passionate about what it is you're wanting to do. When I ask people where the idea came from, and if you hear something like, well, I don't know, it wasn't really a specific idea, I just saw how well people were doing, with this inexpensive counter service burrito. And I thought, God, why not me too? Okay, that's not really as much of a basis for a long-range concept as the successful people that are saying, I was first impressed with this particular experience that I had, say in this sports environment in college. I've been looking for that kind of a thing, didn't really like the chain sports bars or just the wing places. I really wanted that better restaurant kind of a experience, but sports themed. And so I see now you can kind of get that. You can see where the idea came from, an experience, something that impacted them. How many restaurant owners talk about how their experience came from working in the kitchen as a kid and just deciding, God, I like this. I like grandmother's recipes. I like the street food that came from the neighborhood where I was raised. And I, went home and I cooked that kind of stuff with my mother. And I thought, I'm going to do my little version of these sliced gyros or tacos. And so that's kind of things that we see happening most of the time. So if you're going to get started, do that. Check your passion. Check your interest. What is it that you're really wanting to accomplish? Not just, I hope it's busy because I know others are, but what's connecting you to this? Because I tell you what, as we go through the long process of buying and building out a truck or finding a location and building out a restaurant, your idea is going to get tested and you're going to have hurdles to overcome. But if you're really connected to your idea, you stick with it and you make it work. And that's where the success comes from. But if there isn't a passionate connection to the idea, then I say, move on, keep digging till you really find something that you can latch onto. Here's a good point. Why is it that so many successful so many successful restaurant operators seem to come from other industries? Have you noticed that? I don't know anything about any other industry. I may have told you that before. But what I think is interesting is that in our industry, I've met a tremendous amount of people that were successful in something else. Went to college, studied finance, maybe they got into accounting with a large company. They were, I don't know, doing distribution of oil parts or something, but they couldn't wait to get to that 30 or 40-year mark where they could retire, take their savings and go open up, I don't know, an Italian restaurant, all based on the marinara recipe of their mother-in-law because it's fantastic. Have you heard a story like that? People from outside our industry jumping in. There's something, I think, magnetic about our industry. And I think it attracts people that are professional restaurant customers. They can't wait to leave something that maybe they're not passionate about, they're not connected to, but it's okay because they're making money. And they can't wait until they leave that so they can then find something that they connect with. Now, I've told people many times that when you're in your early stages of concepting, it's really good if you have some work experience, but not every successful restaurant operator comes from within, from cooking, from managing, and then raising some money and doing it on their own. I did, others have, but not all. There's a tremendous amount of successful restaurateurs that have some passionate connection to an idea, but they came from some other industry. They just couldn't wait to get out of that and come to restaurants. And they have just as much opportunity to succeed as those in the industry, as long as they're totally prepared and they follow all of the steps that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. The idea about concepting here, the reason I make such a big point of the initial idea and making sure that you're really well honed in and really well connected is because you're just beginning a journey that is going to be more competitive than it was before. Opening a restaurant and a food truck is also not just a competitive landscape, but it's also more expensive than it was before. So it isn't just good enough to do a concept that's good enough. It isn't good enough to say just be on target. The ones that are successful now didn't just hit the dartboard with their idea. They hit the bullseye. And so that's why you really want to think your idea through and be passionately connected. So this way you maintain focus and you have much better luck then of hitting the bullseye when you open and being right on target with your customers than other concepts that might lose focus along the way. The other point I'd like to make when you're thinking about your initial concept isn't just your particular passion, your connection, how you see your role in it, but then you want to flip it and you want to see how is this concept going to be read and understood by your customer? Who is your customer? Is your customer the suburban family? Is your customer more of the, say, young single in a urban apartment complex where you're going to make maybe a circuit out of to park your food trucks? Is it the weekend socializing group that goes to farmers markets? Is it the large parties, business groups, social events, birthday parties? Who's the user of this concept? Answer that question, and then you've done a pretty good job of getting started with defining your concept. Does that make sense? We're going to move on now to the actual process of defining that concept. I think there's a term I like to use. I just call it sort of funneling. You sort of funnel if you just imagine a large funnel, and then you're going to throw all of your different ideas of this concept that you're passionate about, how it's going to work, what you think it's going to look like, how big it should be, where you think it should be, types of food, price ranges. When you're in this stage, what you really want to do is two things. You want to just keep your focus on what does winning look like to me? Is it going to be serving X amount of people? Is it going to be being known for the best thick crust pizza? Is it going to be something that I can expand? I want to be known as the creator of a small salad bar. And so winning to me isn't going to be just opening one, but it's opening one in a way that I created a concept for tomorrow and the next day, and I can interest others and create a chain out of. So as we're funneling our ideas, that's what we want to do, is each one that goes into the funnel, we want to say, and what does winning look like? Does it have some type of impact on the size, the design, the menu, the price, how I'm going to manage, how I set up the companies, or not? Though the first question is that, how do these things look like winning to me? And that's going to keep you focused. The second question that you want to ask when you have all of these things coming in, ideas that I like, places that I've been to that I liked, things that I always wanted to incorporate into my concept. Some of them are design, some of them are food, some of them are service, some of them are uniforms, some of them might be marketing ideas. All of these things that you're funneling are meant to just go through the funnel, and after you're answering questions like, what does winning look like to me? And then the next big question is, how does this help me develop my point of difference? What's going to be my point of difference? Then that's what's going to be coming out. It's all going to mold and kind of meld together. Size, design, how it should be managed, where it should be, what type of customer, what's the price range? If we can answer the question, does this keep me on target? Does it look like I'm winning if I do it? Then that means those are the things that are falling through, and some of the others just won't. If it also says, how does this help me create my point of difference? Then those are the things that are going to be falling through. And that's what you're going to wind up working with. And if it isn't something that's going to create a point of difference, then it may not make it through the funnel. So that's kind of if you could just have sort of a visual picture of that process, that's what you're doing. Once you've done the first step and you've, passionately connected to what your idea is, then you're starting, and this can be taking a while. Then you're taking your time on collecting all of your ideas about what you're passionate about that might impact the design, the style of service, what you've seen that you've liked, what you haven't liked, marketing approaches, food items, recipes, structure, roles. And then as long as it's coming through that process and you're picking things that help you focus on your win, and it also helps you develop your point of difference, then there are things that we can work with. There are things that we're ready to go test. So what's a good example of a point of difference? Think about your current habits, why you might like going to one particular place instead of another for a particular occasion. Casual, after work, meeting friends for a cocktail. Why is it that you're drawn to, say, Tommy's and not the other place? Is it just something about the place that makes you feel like you belong? Is it an atmosphere? Is it a particular product? Is it a price range? What is it that he's doing that's a little bit different that you just simply like better? Well, that's obviously Tommy's Bar's point of difference. So then you want to look at everything that just went through the funnel and all of your notes on design and size and management structure and whatnot. And from a customer point of view, what's your point of difference? What's your little twist? Is it going to be in multiple areas? Is it going to be the way it looks? Is it going to be the menu item? How the menu is presented? Is it going to be the seasonal menuing? Is it going to be something that's in the atmosphere? Is it going to be something that is conceptual, like a place where you don't just eat, but you wanted to create maybe an environment where you could eat, play, meet, and you pick up one of those entertainment concepts? Maybe that's what you're passionate about. So now you've got games, bowling, and maybe meeting rooms, as well as a casual place to eat, because maybe that's your point of difference. For those of you looking at food trucks, you might be looking at pushing the envelope of the ethnicity. You might be saying, my point of difference is I'm not just going to be another taco truck. Okay. However, because taco trucks are very successful, I'm going to be able to follow their lead with type of, say, portion, type of price range, but I'm going to be making something different, some other type of a product line that fits in nicely, competing with the success of the portion, presentation, and price of a popular taco truck. Stretching ethnicity is a really good point of difference. Most major markets now aren't just looking for mainstream south of the border food, but looking for something that is a little different. So is this more Central American, or is this more border Tex-Mex? Is this more interior Mexico? We're doing the same thing with Asian cuisines, European cuisines, African cuisines. People are looking for not just the same item, but what are you doing that's different and interesting with that item? So that's that second step. That's how you define the concept, is you're taking all those things through the funnel and you're looking at them and you're able to answer the question, how is the guest going to see that a little bit differently than what's out there now? Look at all the ways successful restaurants have redefined common items, whether it's the reinvention of the chicken sandwich that we did about 5 years ago. And some people were thinking, well, that's kind of boring. Everyone's got a chicken sandwich. Every menu I go to, every knife and fork casual restaurant I go to, every fast food guy's got a chicken sandwich. But wasn't it just 5, 6 years ago? And didn't it start with Popeyes, I think, where it was like, let's just attack that niche, reinvent it, and do something better, fresher, better, higher quality bun, interesting seasoning, and say we've reinvented, because that's our point of difference. It isn't a chicken sandwich, it's our chicken sandwich. And the industry pretty much followed, and everybody had to get better and everyone had to reinvent. You can do that a lot with bakery. Those of you who are thinking of a food truck, or you're thinking of a small bakery because you really do good with cakes and pies, think of something that maybe you're going to be able to do differently, elevate, and that's a point of difference. National chains like Crave and Sprinkles were all successful because when they went through this concept process, and when they decided that they wanted to be convenient and good quality in baking, and when they went through funneling, came out a type of cupcake that said, this is what's going to define our win. We're going to be able to expand this and put this in multiple places, because what we're doing is something that people already know about. People think is relatively simple. We're just making it more interesting again. We're going to make the 4-pack and the 6-pack, and we're going to have inventive frostings, and we're going to make cupcake an interesting item that you have to take to the office instead of maybe what you used to do, like a platter of donuts, or you have to take to your friend's house if you're going to a visit over a weekend. So they sort of recreate it. So that's what I mean by the first 2 steps: where the ideas come from, how to get passionately connected to an idea, or don't really start the process until you are passionately connected to what you're going to do. The second step is defining your concept as imagining a funnel, and all of your ideas, all of your impressions, all of your experiences go through that funnel, and what's going to come out are the ones that answer those 2 questions. That this is how I would determine winning. It's going to be something I can take to my customer, do to my farmer market, I can do again and again, or I can remain passionate to, because I'm a chef-driven restaurant, and that's what I want. Just one seasonal menu, chef-driven restaurant. And then it answers the second question: how am I doing it in a manner where the guests are going to see a point of difference? Is it something about me? Is it something about how I reinvented my product line, my experiences, my atmosphere, my marketing? But you've got to answer both questions, and then bingo, we're halfway there. Okay, the next thing we want to do now is test it. The best ways for market research is to test this idea. We feel excited about it. We're passionately connected. We've done all types of information and data collecting. We've funneled, like Chris said, and I'm really excited about the results. I've got a well-defined idea, and I know what my point of difference is. So we want to make sure then that we start doing some market research. And what's the best way of doing that? I'm going to give you some tips that I know have worked for me. You want to know where to go to collect accurate industry data. Okay, so that's one thing, is I want to know about my idea, and I want to know how my idea is, say, currently accepted. Is it a counter service idea, a food truck idea? Is it a catering hall idea? So where can I go to get good, accurate industry data? Okay, again, your friends and the capable advisors of the Small Business Development Center can be a help here. That's one question you might want to ask them about. A lot of times they can provide market research for geographic areas, customer profiling. In addition to that, they might be able to direct you to some of the same sources that I'm going to mention now. There are restaurant-specific sources. Some are easy to track on the web. Some are associations that you go to. Some are what we call think tanks that you go online but you have to subscribe to. And you can get a lot of information on where the industry is going right now, what's working, what the consumer trends are, what type of customer is spending how much and how often. And this is kind of important information for us to know at the beginning. And we're going to need to put some of this information in our business plan, which is what we're going to be talking about next time. But we need to know now to make sure that we're on track and that we're going to be attracting the right customer, where we know where they are now. We know how much they're going to be spending. We know how I might need to be prepared to compete in my niche. So there are companies out there, like, for example, one is called Black Box. You can find them online and subscribe to their information. There is one called Technomic that is a very interesting restaurant industry think tank. Tremendous amount of weekly newsletters, consumer trend information. They're based in Chicago. They have a tremendous following. I like to stay close to a lot of their information because it's current and it's accurate. There's Aaron Allen and Associates. It's another website firm based in Florida, offices in Chicago. They also have newsletters. They also have research. You can go on the web and specifically look for a type of sector, like the sector you might want to be going into: food trucks, fast food, counter service, full service, with liquor, without liquor, private dining rooms, mobile catering companies, just to see who are the leaders, who's doing what, and where are the trends, taking us. And then, of course, there's your restaurant associations, and don't overlook them because they're chock full of people who might be able to help you. You don't have to be a restaurant already to be a member or to go to a meeting. And once you join, you'll get a plethora of information. You've got workshops that you can go to. You've got meetings that you can go to. And then what's interesting is you'll also get the roster of their members. And what's going to be important to note at this point isn't so much all the different restaurants that are members, although that's fun. And there'll be a lot of restaurants tours that you might want to go to and talk to. That is also part of our research. But at this point, you're going to want to look at those other members, the supporting members, the people who will provide goods and services to restaurants, because there might be plenty of people there that know things about market research, real estate, financing restaurants, banks, accounting firms. Those are the ones you're going to want to talk to get current, accurate information on what type of restaurant you're doing and what kind of costs should you be looking at as far as operations go and even openings go. So that's where you want to go to get accurate information. There's associations, websites, organizations, email newsletters, and one other one called restaurantowner.com. It's a web-based information educational website that, in my opinion, is probably the best one out there today for the small startup. I bet a lot of your SBDC advisors throughout the region know of that website, might even be members, so they can help you with the information that you're looking for. So that's where you go to get information that's current and accurate. Okay, you don't want to just kind of test out your idea by thinking of old information or only one type of source. How you collect personal concept research is important. It isn't all from a website or an email newsletter. It isn't all from books, although those are great, or it isn't all from going to association meetings. You want to conduct your own personal research, and this is done in a couple ways. Going to restaurants that are similar to you, staying there. Now you're a customer, but you're more than a customer. You're sort of studying. You want to see how long it takes for service. You want to see what people are ordering. You want to see the type of customer that's going there, size of party, age, how long they stay, how much they spend. A lot of this can be done through observation. I know later on when we get into the business planning, we're going to talk about why you do this to understand customer patterns in a particular site. Right now, you're not looking for a particular location, but you're just taking a look for similar environments like yours. Food truck parks, farmers markets, strip center restaurants, freestanding restaurants, things that you know are similar to you, and you just want to experience that. You want to talk to them. This might sound silly, but I'm telling you, it works. The next thing you want to do for personal research is talk to people that you know and like in the business. If you and your wife go to a particular restaurant a couple times a month, or maybe you like to go to a particular neighborhood restaurant with your neighbors when you guys do your adult night out, or maybe there is a particular family restaurant you go to regularly with the kids after church on Sunday. If you get to know the manager or they get to know you, don't be afraid to say, listen, I'd love to pop in here one afternoon. Can we just have a cup of coffee and talk? I'm at the beginning stages of kind of testing out my idea. And I've heard that, restaurant people will answer questions and reach out and help restaurant people. And you've heard right. This is an interesting industry in that people like to learn from other people, and people are willing to share. Now, part of that reason is they know that you're not going to sit down and ask them things like, I want to do a restaurant just like yours, and I just want to go on the other side of town. So can you tell me how busy you are and how much money you make? What was cash flow last month? And I sure would like your meatloaf recipe. They know you're not going to be asking silly things like that. But initial concepting things about how they did their research, things that they would do again, things they would never do again. What were the surprises they had along the way? These are kinds of interesting things that you can learn just in conversation and by sharing. And I always recommend people do that. Look at restaurant podcasts and listen to those restaurant operators who talk about their recent openings or their plans for expansion. And you'll learn from things that they did well, things that they did not do well. They will tell you about how long things take and about how much things cost. So this is important to do. Travel. Network, as I just mentioned, with the educational committees, the different trade associations, and the different restaurant owners that are out there. And then another way of just kind of testing out your concept for research purposes is just among small family and friends pop-ups. Go ahead and say, I've talked to restaurants, I've listened to podcasts, I've got some accurate information. I'm getting more excited about what I want to do by what I'm learning. So what I'd like to do now is put a small team together that I'm going to network with, family members, potential customers, maybe workers, friends, and do pop-ups and get input from them, their first impression of what it is you're wanting to do. I came to your house and this is the way you want to operate your restaurant. We'll be ordering it this way. The food's going to kind of look this way. Trucks do this really well by just testing out things, going to weekends, farmers markets. And it's just a test of an item and they're wanting to get people's comments. And that's very important, is to get people's comments of their first impression, price, portion, style of service, quality of taste. So these are things that you want to do while your idea is very fresh, because you haven't even written your plan yet. Your mold isn't set. But if you do these things, then you're doing really good preliminary market research. Associations, websites, podcasts, books, SBDC, and then your own little test among a small little family group. Sounds good? Okay, here's the deal. Now we're going to get further along. How do I, now that I've passionately connected, funneled my ideas, did some preliminary market research, take that next step? I've got to get these thoughts organized, tested. I've got to make it work. Well, there's a couple of things. One is, it would be good at this point to work in the industry. If you haven't worked in the industry, it might be fine. And I've known people that have done this, even while they're still working at their full-time job and they haven't given notice, they're not ready to leave yet. They're just teasing with their initial concept, but they go ahead and they go to one of those restaurants where they're known as a customer. They've made friends with the manager and they've explained that this is something they just need to learn about. So they kind of come up with either a staging program where you're coming in once or twice a week on your own to shadow, and it's sort of free internship. Or sometimes you actually want to be hired on as an employee just to work part-time in the niche of the industry that is very similar to what you're going to be doing. Something about hands-on experience doesn't have to be for a long period of time. Remember, I mentioned that there's a lot of people that are successful in the restaurant industry that haven't come up from the ranks. They haven't run a lot of restaurants. I've worked with many of those people, and that's very possible. But along the way, it was important for them just to get a feel. Just to get a feel for how the restaurant operates, how you interact with the guests, the type of employee, how they cross-train, how they have to multitask. When you're busy and when you're slow, what are the duties that each person is doing? How much goes into preparation and receiving and cleanup and inventory? Just visually doing this. Even just something as silly as see how your body feels after 8 hours of standing on quarry tile in the kitchen. Just get a feel for the people, the product, the place, that this is an environment that you might be successfully owning and operating in the future. So I think doing a little bit of that is really important. And while you're doing that, then what we want to do is start defining the research that's been done categorically. That's the next step. And that's pretty much the last step of this concept development program. Because if we do all of these steps right, then we're ready for what we're going to be talking about in the next episode. And that's putting it on paper, telling our story, developing a business plan that makes sense. But in order to do that, we need sort of a connector. We started with our idea, passion, funneling, market research, data collecting, idea testing. This is all good first steps. Now, what we really want to do is organize what we're learning by categories. So if you wanted to do this old-fashioned and just set out envelopes or manila folders, or if you're just going to open up files on your laptop, what you want to do is start defining all the different information by category. The first category is going to be things that are concept related. Going back to your earlier things, so what defines my concept? A good concept is defined, by how the guest is going to perceive what it is you're doing. So think in terms of the 5 senses. So I'm going to start putting things in that file folder that define how my place is going to look. Pictures maybe of colors and layouts and designs that I liked. Anything about the style of service, table service, bar, or counter service. Maybe it's going to be open kitchen, aroma, music program, live bands, anything that defines how the customer is going to see, hear, feel, touch, taste, your concept. So right now it isn't written, but you've got really good research that you've collected, notes that you've taken from the podcasts you've listened to. You've got notes from the restaurant managers and people that you worked with. You have that preliminary funneling, remember, of all the things that you've collected, places that you've been to, traveled. So your concept folder is going to be full of everything that just kind of talks about your size, your hours of operation, your style of service, how you're going to look, what the customer is going to feel, what they're going to hear. That goes in one stack, or that goes in one list, or in one envelope. The next folder, I think, is where you just want to organize all of your thoughts about the market segment that you're entering. I'll use that example again. Maybe you're doing a counter service, something. Maybe you're doing a bakery. So when you were doing your industry data collecting, what was it about that market segment? Who are the leaders in that market segment? Things about cost, consumer trends, who's the customer for that kind of market? The things that you've picked up from those email newsletters, from the books, from the advisors that you've met with, the associations that you went to, that help define the market segment you're competing in. Food truck is one, drive-through fast food is one, counter service, catering companies, fine dining. Which one do you see your concept in? And all the data that you've learned about that concept would go into your second file or envelope or folder. You see, what we're doing here is we're kind of laying out and organizing so that you can see what you might have enough information of and where you might still be lacking. All of this information is going to lay the foundation for the writing of the business plan that we're going to get into next. So right now we're just organizing the concept development notes, and the things that we've learned through our preliminary research. The third one will be about the location. What are the location or locations that you're looking at that's right for your concept? If you're mobile and this is food truck, you've probably got 3 or 4 ideas of parks or business districts, or maybe networking with different apartments that are going to allow you to park there. Or are you using your truck more for off-premise catering? How are you going to promote that? Where are the places that you see you're going to be successful? For the restaurant operators, you'll know by now that if this is your pizza by the slice concept, and you know about how big it needs to be, is this better in an urban setting? You're looking for maybe a tunnel, or you're looking for a strong breakfast lunch. Are you looking for non-traditional locations like you want to be in universities, ballparks, airports, or are you looking for something more traditional like I want to be where the people live, suburban, strip centers, small space, counter service, or I'm going to be delivery only, online order, ghost kitchen, somewhere in a warehouse park. Wherever it is that you're leaning towards, this is the file folder that you would put pictures, information, aerial maps, actual locations, elevations of the shopping center. So anything that helps define where you think you're going to succeed best is going to go into that location folder. So you see where we're heading? We're just organizing the thoughts. And every time I do this with someone, light bulbs start blinking. Excuse me, and we start realizing we didn't really research that enough. I don't know how to answer that question. So I know where I have plenty of data, and I know where I'm weak, and I still need to maybe get more information so that I can more accurately develop a good business plan. This next folder is probably your easiest. It's the menu one. Anything that you thought about, menu, item, price range, portion, presentation, recipes, plate photography, anything that you've been collecting in your preliminary research that is going to help define your menu items or describe your menu offerings, boom, that's where it goes, in that folder. Then we have a folder on how we're going to operate. Remember, I talked earlier on about when you get passionate about an idea, you define what your role is going to be in that idea. So this next envelope is what I would call your management envelope. Anything that is going to help you know how you're going to be operating this thing successfully. How's it going to work? What's my role going to be? Am I doing this because I'm more of the back of the house? I'm the food expert. I wanted to get into this business because of my family recipes, or I'm a well-trained culinary expert. Okay, then who are the other roles going to be? Are they going to be defined by shift leads, head counter server, front of the house manager, general manager? How are we going to manage this? And then think about things that are going to help describe how you manage the staff selection, how you want your staff to be trained, what type of accounting process, anything about POS, opening, closing, facility maintenance, all of the things that you're going to be carefully wanting to implement in your business would go into this file. A lot of those are the items that you're probably going to be picking up when you have those conversations with the restaurant operators of where you go, and they're sharing a day in the life with you. Who does what, how long things take, what purveyors really are good, what purveyors they don't like. So you'll get a lot of that firsthand information that's going to go into this folder that way. You're also going to get that some from the trade associations as well. So all of this data is going to be coming from some of that preliminary market research that you've been doing. So you've done menu, you've done management. The next folder is going to be full of your marketing ideas. How do you want your brand understood? Do you have an idea, name, logo? At this point, you may. This point you may not, but what you'll definitely have are some of the marketing ideas that you've seen in restaurants that you go to that you like. You probably also have some that you don't like. And so you want to make note of things that you want to pay attention to, websites that you think made sense, that you would like to be like, types of advertising that you reacted well to, local store promotions, social media that works for you. These are all the kinds of things that I think are important to put into a folder so that you can see, wow, I've got a lot of marketing I'm going to be discussing. Some of it food promotions in store, some of it community promotions that I want to do in the community, some social media like this type of a program that I like, some of the food photography over here I want to stay away from because I get that kind of stuff Instagram to me and I don't like it. So you just want to form a basis for your marketing, and that goes into a separate folder. And then what you've got next now is your financial folder. The financial folder is going to become a very detailed item that defines your opening budget and also your annual operating income projections, which of course we're going to spend time on in the future, but you're going to wonder, where did that information come from in the future? And it starts coming here. When you're defining your initial idea, when you're doing your preliminary research, when you're doing your testing, when you're doing your association meetings, you're meeting with advisors, when you're polling your market segment information, you're going to be learning from things regarding costs. When you go to these restaurant websites, you're going to even find templates, for example, that list proper restaurant opening budgets. So these are excellent things to download and just start reviewing. You may not have all of the answers for how much all of those items might cost. You may not be ready to really put your idea into table turns, how much every person might be spending, what my weekly volume should be, what my annual revenue should be. We're going to get to that. But when we get to that, a lot of those assumptions that we work with come from the data you've collected right here. So as you see things that you know you're going to be doing in the concept, and if you learn about their cost, where do you put their cost or their cost estimate? In this folder. As you're meeting some of the professionals that the associations introduce you to, and they tell you what their fees are for restaurants, like restaurant accounting, restaurant design, what construction is costing, as they tell you what type of equipment your idea is probably going to need, and you get some initial equipment lists from the equipment providers that are part of the restaurant association or however else you met them. All that information goes in here. So any preliminary budget, any cost receipt, any estimate, any initial proposal for any service that you think you might need to use or want to use in the future, it goes into this envelope or file folder. And same thing with revenue. The more you're out there and the more you think, these are prices that I think I'm going to be able to charge. This is how many seats I think I'm going to be able to have. This restaurant is X amount of busy, or I'm taking my truck now to a farmer's market. I'm doing X amount of business on the weekend. So I'm using these as a basis to come up with my income projections that are going to be part of my business plan. And so all of those kinds of things go here. The idea from concept, the idea from what market it fits into, then where the location might be best for me, and then my menu, my management, my marketing, and my costs. All of those things are not complete at this point, of course. They're not even written in an orderly manner yet. However, they are in a rough form and they're collected. They're good data because they're current and they're accurate, and you got them from the sources that come through the preliminary concept development phase. So that's just the first step. And there may have been more to this than some of you were thinking. I think a lot of times I meet with people and they sometimes undercut just that initial thinking, organizing, data collecting, and laying out the data stage. Because what they did is they went right from their idea into looking for locations. Or they took their idea and immediately went to how much I think it's going to cost, and let's start raising money. Or I have a rough idea, and before it's defined, let me get with a professional and write up the business plan, which is really hard to do because the business plan at that point is just creating a lot of questions and you don't have the answers for them. But if you don't undershoot it, if you just do these 3 or 4 things that I was talking about, and you learn from the people that you're talking to, and you collect the data, and you go to the associations, and then you organize your thoughts in this manner, you're going to be much better prepared now to go through the opening process. And as we go into the next step, you're going to be able to more easily and more completely come up with an accurate business plan. So when we talk about initial concepting, I always like to end that with just something that I wrote long ago. It was in an article, and I refer to it because it's a pretty good overview of some do's and don'ts for those of us who are thinking about getting into the restaurant business for the first time, or those of us who are thinking about doing a food truck. These are 10 steps that I think are throughout the process going to help you greatly. Some we've mentioned already. Some are going to come up as you stick with this series. They'll be coming up in our business planning, or they'll be coming up in our timeline management. But these are 10 principles that got nicknamed the Tripoli 10 Commandments. So I'm going to take just a minute and share them with you, and then we'll still have a couple minutes left to review things or answer questions. But if you're just making notes of some of the key things that I should be doing in order to open correctly, number one would be work in the industry first. Again, as I mentioned, you don't have to work a lot. You don't have to come from the industry, but a little understanding of a day in the life of the industry that you're choosing to get into goes a long, long way. So work in the industry a little bit. The second commandment would be to define your concept. Don't try to do too much. Well, like we talked about today, taking all of those ideas and funneling to only bring the ones that you know help you stay focused and define your point of difference will keep you from trying to do too much. You can always modify your concepts little by little, but some concepts that fail are the ones that were indecisive. They were trying to be a little bit of everything to everybody. So the menu was all over the place. Their marketing was over the place. The customers didn't know how to understand them. So we want to nip that in the bud. Define your concept. The third one is research. So please don't undercut the preliminary research that we talked about today, whether it's the associations or the advisors, whether it's just being active and discussing with people that you know in the industry, the podcasts, the downloads, the email newsletters, the websites. You want to do your research. The fourth one is when we get to it, we want to make sure that we're selecting the site that's right. Site selection is very important. It's most important to use an expert. When we get to that point, we're going to talk about certain experts that help startups in this industry. And you don't want to just go out there on your own because you think this is a good looking building, or you don't want to use a real estate broker just because he's a friend of yours, or your kids go to the same school. That's not it. You want to use people to represent you because they specifically work with restaurants. Budget and finance. And of course, we're going to spend a lot of time on that. A well concept that succeeds when they open typically did step 5 really well. They budgeted, they had a good contingency, they had working capital reserve, and they were financed correctly. You just can't undercut that. Step 6 is be active. Supervise your pre-opening process. When we're all done with the research and the plan is written, you're excited, and then you start the pre-opening process. And you don't want to just rely too much on the experts that are designing, the experts that are building. You want to supervise the pre-opening yourself. You don't have to be an expert in everything. You just have to be involved in everything because you're the final say-so. You're the front of the check, so you have to be involved in everything. Number 7 is the training and development. Please make note of that. Too many people get in a hurry when they open. So as soon as somebody's hired, they hurry and they open and they say, we're going to train after we open because, the owners are going to be here anyway. And that's the kiss of death. You definitely want your staff to feel comfortable and confident in their knowledge. So you have to train before you open. Commandment number 8 is select purveyors correctly. We're going to spend some time on that in the opening process where you visit who you're going to want to order your goods and services from. You don't just pick the dairy guy because he drove by the location and left you a price list. You want to check the referrals because these are people that are going to be sort of partners in your business as you go forward. And then number 9 is you want to stay the course. Today was just the first step in outlining a course of action. The best restaurants are the ones that once it's defined, they stay the course. Because if they don't stay focused, then they might still hit the dartboard, but they're certainly not going to hit the bullseye. And number 10 is don't fear failure. I know some of you are thinking, that people have already told you might be nuts. Opening a restaurant is kind of crazy, takes too much time, too competitive, too many people fail. Okay, there's a certain truth to each of those, but it's not a widely held truth that 90% of the first year restaurants fail. I don't know where that got started, but it's wrong. This is definitely a competitive industry, and it's probably the most competitive out there. It is certainly tough, yes, with tight margins and fickle customers. I don't doubt that a bit. But opening up a restaurant or doing your food truck isn't about being scared. It's all about being prepared. And a well-prepared program gets you to a situation where you've got every opportunity to succeed. And that's what we're shooting for. Okay, so that's step one, just initial concepting and some overview notes. Please join me when we do our second step, because we're going to actually go through the categories of building your business plan to successfully open a restaurant or food truck.